Hey y'all, it's Mary. Welcome back to an episode of Not Just Lip Service. I have a special guest today. Holly Scott is with us, and she is from the North Georgia area. I'll let her introduce herself. But we're just gonna chat. We're gonna talk about her journey with us as an independent med spa owner. She's coming on board with us as a trainer, which is very exciting. And we're just gonna kind of see where the conversation goes, and maybe keep it a little clinical and talk some clinical stuff with her, but also just kind of her journey from a business standpoint and kind of where she's at now. She has bought a device, which is something that many of our med spa owners either have not done yet or are scared to do. And so she can transparently talk through her journey with that and how that's going, and then how it relates to her injecting, which is how most of our med spa owners start out with us. So, hello.
Hi.
Let's do a little intro and like your backstory as a nurse, whatever.
Yeah. So like she said, my name is Holly Scott. I started my career in emergency medicine at University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and then kind of transitioned into critical care. So the last 6 years, I have been primarily critical care. Which I think is definitely not a requirement, but it has served me really well.
Yeah,
in this space. And then a little over a year ago, I joined Smiley Aesthetics. Kind of fell in my lap opportunity. I was actually doing a travel contract and met one of the independent injectors in Knoxville. And she was like, "We have a training this weekend." And I was like, "Sounds great. Let's go." And then here we are. So what a whirlwind experience it's been.
Yeah.
But a very good one. So I am in the North Georgia area, so right under Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I knew no one there. That we moved there from North Carolina. I'm originally from North Carolina. So besides my husband's family, I didn't have any friends or any family to market my services to.
Yeah.
So it has been a very unique growing experience in that as well.
Okay, good. So we'll definitely touch on that. So I like what you said about the critical care. It's not like you have to be in critical care to do aesthetics, obviously, but I think the nerves behind starting aesthetics, and I'll let you speak to this, is like, it's impressive. It's enough to make people not inject. They get trained and stuff, and then they get ready to go on their own, or they get ready to just anything, even work in a med spa, and they're so nervous to inject. It's very interesting. So I can see where the ICU background and stuff, and just the pressure and of ICU and that type of nurse would translate better into even just that beginning stage of injecting.
Yeah. And I had a moment like when I was first getting started, I was getting myself so worked up about my first event. And
I remember that.
I was so nervous about it. And my husband looked at me and he was like, "Do you know what you do every day?"
Yeah, it's
and I kind of take a step back and be like, "Oh my gosh, like if my levo runs dry,
yeah,
I'm not paying attention to something, like my patients are dying."
Yeah.
And with this, nobody's dying.
I know, it's such an interesting, but it's like across the board, like 100% of people, including myself. God, I remember. I mean, it was like a whole year of just nerves of injecting when I first started injecting, and my background's in anesthesia and critical care as well. But it's just crazy how that happens, and it really will stop injectors. And I don't like saying that too much because I don't want then new injectors or people listening to this who are about to get trained or are going to get trained to be like, "Oh my God, am I going to be able to do it?" Like, yeah, it's just something. I think if you tackle it on the front end, that's why we bring it up so often, and like think about it and know that, okay, I'm probably going to be nervous, or maybe evaluate yourself in training so you can kind of psych yourself up and have an attitude check for post-training when you go to start injecting. So let's talk about, you said you had moved somewhere because this competitive thing with this market is like, oh my God, sometimes I just, I get it, but it's typically, I did a webinar last night with a group, and I said it last night. It's usually the med spa or the injector or the med spa owner issue, not that there's one on every corner. And I don't say that to be mean or anything. It's just like there's so many untouched faces, even in tiny little towns. So if you have 3 med spas in a town of 5,000, and let's say, once again, 50% of the people want a service, and that's about accurate. There's no way that those 3 people could even service all 2,500 of those people successfully, because you just don't even, like, with the way client retention is and how often they're treated and then different modalities, like you couldn't service all of those people successfully, or the waiting list would be super long. So most towns are not 5,000, and most towns with 5,000 don't have 3 med spas. So that's an extreme example. But when you talk about moving somewhere where, everyone has most people have this influx of friends and family when they first get started. And it's this really great, like, oh my God, wahoo. And then it dips very quickly because nobody needs Botox for like 3 months. And that can be super scary. And we try to warn people about that on the forefront, but you didn't even have that. So, talk to me about, and transparently, like, what was your first, I don't know, 3 to 6 months like, and, with Smiley?
So I'll definitely say I thought it was going to be easier. I thought to find clients. Like I thought that like everybody wants Botox.
Right.
And then a big part of the model with Smiley is like this concierge service. Like we're mobile injectors. We come to your house. And I thought people would like that. And I found that people in my area did not like that. And so that was really hard because some of the other injectors that I was talking to a lot, Mercedes is a great example, her clients wanted her to come to them. And I'm like, how do you get them to want that? And I think like you have to know your demographic.
For sure.
And so that was like a learning curve for me of like, okay, if they don't want me to come to them, how do I still offer my services when I didn't have a space? And so I ended up going to a lot of local salons, even like tanning salons and stuff like that, and just talking to people and, kind of saying up front, like, this doesn't cost you anything. It's an additional service that you can offer your clients and get people in your doors. And so that was how I got started. I actually drove for my first party an hour and a half to Blue Ridge, Georgia. And that's where I saw a lot of my initial success was going out there, and I ended up going once a month. But building those relationships with some of the other local business owners, or even not so local, but, definitely worth the drive.
Yeah.
And then I ended up, so that started in April. And so April through August, I primarily did parties and events where I would go out to places about once a month. And then in August, I signed on with one of our local salons. And so I have a suite there. And that, honestly, again, I thought that was going to be easier than it was. I thought I would just get an influx of clients from them. And I have got a lot of clients from referrals from the stylist there. But it's still building your own brand.
Yeah.
Building your own clientele and word of mouth and going out to those businesses is how I saw the most success.
Yeah, and it's such a common thought to think that, like, oh, I'm going to get it. And it's so trendy right now. And it's social media's fault. Everything's social media's fault. It's so trendy to get into aesthetics. And so, yes, a lot of people are. And, per usual with social media, you hear the bad, not the good. But still, people are getting used. It's more just seeing people starting this, I think, on your feed and stuff. And as medical providers, we're already in a niche, and Instagram already kind of knows. So you're seeing that's what you see constantly. So it feels like a ton of people are doing it. And it is happening a lot, but it's not that often. I mean, my God, you still it's not as often as people are fearing. Just remember that Instagram and social media know what you want to see and know what you click on or like, or even, spend more time on when you stop scrolling for a second and watch a reel. It knows everything. So if you feel like you're seeing every medical provider on your daggum Instagram going into aesthetics, it's just an algorithm, and that's a friendly reminder. But to her point, the thought that there's this influx of clients is so common. And like I said, most of the time you will get a little friend influx or whatever, unless you've moved somewhere new. But Holly's a great example. I mean, you're a great example of like, it can still work. It just isn't, entrepreneurship in general, we say it all the time. It is a little grind. It doesn't have to be, Carl loves to say, it's not this negative, like, oh my God, I hate it. Blah. Now there are moments where you're like, holy, like, what am I? And I'm sure Holly can speak to that pretty well. Like, why did I do this? And what am I doing? But she also has a unique position of going somewhere new, being a new person. And if she can kind of make it and, and see success and still be doing it, I feel like that's a really good success story. Because, when people start, typically they do have friends and family that'll influx and give them this little boost to maybe recoup a tiny bit of their money or whatever that they did. And you didn't have that. So, but what she said about starting out mobile and knowing your demographic, I feel like how am I going to know my demographic if I just moved somewhere, or just, how do I know in general? Like, I don't look around and be like, oh, there's someone who might want, count it out when I'm in Nashville, for example. And it really is kind of just testing it out and seeing. And quickly realizing, like, I think what you did, which is like, we say this all the time, going into salons and tanning stuff or whatever, within a mile radius, there's probably 5. And the amount of business you can get just with that, and you even went even further, which is amazing, is just like, I say easy because it truly is easy. I think if people sometimes start this as a side hustle and, which is fine. And we still maintain, treat it like medicine and blah, blah, blah. Don't we get on that tangent. But still, a side hustle is great. But you have to have time for your side hustle. It can't just be like, oh, people will magically come to me because I offer Botox. But that is such a common thought. So when your thoughts, let's talk about the entrepreneur part, like doing your own business, because that is what we do at Smiley. That's not necessarily what you have to do to get into aesthetics, but we offer a way for people with no experience in aesthetics, but experienced nurses and medical providers and physicians and PAs, but to get into aesthetics, because we don't, this vicious cycle of, oh, you have to have a year or two of injecting experience to work in a med spa. And then to, quite frankly, I was one of these people, work for way less than what I'm worth or what I'm typically getting paid, or getting paid probably non-compliantly. Commission is non-compliant people in every single state. What was it like, the downs? What were the lows like?
Well, before I even started, so let's go back. So when I lived in North Carolina, I actually did look into aesthetics and trying to make that transition. I was super interested in it. And I think one thing that draws me to this world is just the immense opportunity and the potential. Like, I feel like we don't even know where this industry is going.
Oh, no. Yeah. So new, brand new.
There's so much growth and potential. And I love that. I love, kind of just being able to push forward. But my experience there was one of nobody's going to talk to you. It was gatekeeping all the time. I will say I have a friend that I grew up with that her mom has been in this industry, since the 90s, I think. And so she was great to talk to and give me some encouragement. But that didn't help me get started.
Right.
It didn't help me get a job. And so I just kind of gave up on it there because everybody wants this experience that you can't get without experience and that endless cycle. So when Smiley was an opportunity for me, I jumped on that. I was very excited that, but as far as, I forgot the question. What were some of the lows?
Yeah, just like we'll talk about the highs too, but what were like some of the lows in starting out, owning your own? Because I think owning your own business scares some people, and it's like, I don't want to own my own business. And it's like, well, hold on a second. There are avenues where you do it totally by yourself, for sure. And then there's avenues that are more like Smiley. You don't have to necessarily speak to Smiley, but just literally in general. Like, when you looked at yourself in the mirror and like, I don't know, after a day of hustling and got no clients or only got one, like, what was that like, and what did you do to kind of push forward?
I think it's very overwhelming at times, kind of wearing all the hats and I think the hardest thing for me is trying to figure out when to wear which hat.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
And so that also while still working, right? Because what I have done primarily up until this point is I'm not paying myself for my business. I want my business to be profitable and then put back into my business so I can continue to grow. But that's been really hard. And so like those days where you don't have a lot of clients or you're doing all this work and you're posting on social media, and you're reaching out to these businesses and they're just not interested. It's like, is this ever gonna pick up? Am I ever gonna be able to pay myself? And so that is very hard, but just being persistent. And I jokingly said that last year, 2023, was my year of resiliency.
Yeah.
Because you do feel like you get knocked down a lot, but like getting up and like remembering why you're wanting to do this. And for me, this was a huge opportunity to have the lifestyle that I want and not have to work all the holidays and all the weekends, and kind of be my own boss.
Yeah.
That's my why. I want to enjoy what I do every single day and not experience the burnout that I've experienced the last 6 years.
Yeah.
But I kind of had to have a different mindset of I have worked through that for the last 6 years. We've worked through COVID and some really hard times and just the burnout in general that so many medical providers face. It's like, if I can work really hard for 1 more year or 2 more years, not that it's ever going to get easy, but if I can keep that mindset and keep grinding, I can be closer to something that is going to set me up long term that I want long term versus, just doing the same thing every day.
And that's true. That's a really good point, is that it's like, yeah, you can continue to work hard in the hospital and doing your job and of course taking great care of patients, but it's really never going to change. Of course you charge nurse, or if you want to go into leadership, there is a tiny opportunity for that, but But in terms of like, is the even, you know, anesthesia, is the OR going to change? Is the critical care unit going to change? No, there's not. You know, pay is going to increase at the very, very, very low, steady rate that it does. And there's really, other than working extra or working holidays or nights, there's nothing you can really do to make that extra money and do what you're kind of saying. I mean, and that, like, especially for medical providers, that just is what it is. Like, being an entrepreneur, owning your own business is really the only way out of that. You know, I think it can be different in other industries or other, you know, professions. There's just a lot of more routes for people, and, you know, based on our degrees, and, you know, it's even worse as you get a higher degree. So in anesthesia, it's like, sure, we make a little more money, but that is like, it's just like that.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a lot of, other than owning your own business, where then all of a sudden the doors fly open when you decide to take that route. And so for medical providers, that's the route that can then open all these doors into different variations of medicine and stuff. But yeah, the resiliency and stuff, you know, Carla loves to not talk about it, but it's still like, it's definitely a thing. And especially in a service-based industry where you have to garner your own clients, once again, can be a little different. Now, owning any business, you're pretty much having to garner your own income or whatever. But I think for service-based and reputation and stuff, it can be a little more challenging. So then, as you've gotten, so where are you at now? So, and this is going to be news for me because I haven't gotten to talk to you recently. I asked Carla yesterday. I said, so how's she doing? And I said, no, never mind. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. I'm gonna ask her tomorrow and genuinely ask her, like, you know, what have the last like 3 months been like?
A whirlwind, in a good way. So, I bought the Alpha.
Oh, yes.
In November.
Which is?
So the Alpha Pro is a laser hair removal device and IPL. So you can do both with it. It's an incredible device. And love that. But that in itself has kind of been its own learning experience. And I think that I don't regret buying it at all. I would say my advice to other injectors that are looking at purchasing devices and wanting to make that growth is don't get so caught up in wanting to grow that you limit yourself by it. So like for me, and what I mean by that is like I had a good clientele at that point. And I didn't want to lose momentum. I wanted to keep offering more services and expanding and growing. And I think maybe in hindsight, it was maybe a little early for my business to purchase a device, because it's also one of those things with that, like they don't just come.
Yeah. I think they're just going to swarm.
You know,
they don't.
I found a lot of people are interested in something until it comes down to hand me your money.
Yeah. So true.
So, but that being said, you know, it's always a learning experience and growing with that. So I purchased that in November. Really got started with that in January.
That's its own story. We'll just breeze over that.
But really got started with that in January. And that's kind of been a slow build. But this year I have seen my clientele for Botox and filler and like some other services really take off. And so that has been really exciting and kind of given me the time from like a money standpoint to be able to grow that clientele for the Alpha device. So I was really excited. I was sitting down a couple weeks ago. Carla and I had kind of touched base, and we were talking about the Alpha. And I was like, I just need to look at my numbers for this year. Like, I need to look at where I am. And I was shocked. I was laying in bed at like 11 o'clock making this spreadsheet, and I was shocked to realize that my revenue for this year is already, for the first quarter of 2024, was 80% of what I did for the entire year last year.
Talk about growth on that one.
So, and that just shocked me because I feel like I haven't been as busy as I wanted to be so far this year, because they're, you know, working and other things where I kind of had to take a little bit of a step back and focus on some other things more so than I wanted. And I'm just like, I'm still growing.
Yeah.
And so it's really exciting and encouraging for the rest of the year, especially now going in to the next couple of months to have more time to really put in this. And I'm planning my Alpha launch event, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited for you for that.
Lots of exciting things happening.
Yeah, that brings up such an important So the knowing your numbers thing, which is all, once again, I keep referencing Carla because the tangents she get on are like mine, but this is kind of a businessy conversation. But the knowing your numbers is so important. So even brand new, but quarterly is monthly is great. Quarterly is also great. It's real. Carla might have a stronger opinion. Whichever. I think look at it quarterly is a little better starting out because, then it's not, I don't know, if you see a decline or anything in a month to month, it's, there's much less chance of seeing that, I think, quarterly. And so quarterly is great. But seeing that number and stuff, and you're a go-getter, which most entrepreneurs are, hopefully. And if they're not, then those are typically, for the record, if you don't feel that like burn to grow and what Holly's kind of referencing, and this is a little transparent and blunt, with all due respect, it probably ain't for you. And I hate to say that, but even if you've been doing it for 3 years and you still don't feel that and you're getting up and not really looking forward to working on the business or growing it, no matter what you're doing, you're probably a good indicator that you maybe need to do something different. Because if you don't love, and now I'm getting on tangent, if you start your own business and it's not something you love, I can't even imagine. I can't imagine doing something that I didn't wake up and I have not felt an ounce of dread coming to work at Smiley Aesthetics, no matter what my role is, because friendly reminder, wore all the hats too, just like Holly did. Now had a twin sister who was, still wearing all the hats in her own city. This is when we were still separate, but I still enjoyed it. I loved it. I mean, it was almost addicting to a bad point. At one point it was like, I have to reevaluate, what I'm doing, and had a newborn and a 2-year-old and but because I enjoyed it so much. So back on track, if that's not you, or you hear me say that and you're like, well, that's not how I feel, it really should be reconsider what you're doing. Maybe do a different business, which is, oh my God, especially if you're in it for a minute and money's into it, but I don't know that it'll ever be successful if you're not enjoying what you're doing. So there's
a different approach.
Yeah.
Too. That was something I take away from Learners and Legacies this weekend was, you don't have to own your own med spa.
No. Yeah. Yes.
It's okay if you just want to be the injector.
Absolutely.
Wear all hats. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone.
No, exactly. And so to that point, I wasn't saying give up medical aesthetics. If injecting is your passion and then you find wearing the hats, like she said, is what you hate every day, then reconsider the direction you're going. There are med spa jobs, or bringing somebody in, as painful as it is, in some way, and maybe it's giving away equity or doing something if you can't afford it to run the business so you can enjoy it. And it's amazing how life will change and your business will flourish doing that. What were you were talking? Oh, the numbers. That growth, once again, a go-getter. Holly's a go-getter. That's how we are. If we look at last a month or a week and are like, I just feel like I should have been busier. I should have been. Don't should on yourself. Don't should on yourself. I could have done better is a much healthier thing. Don't let me therapize you, but I could versus I should. I don't like shooting on people at all. I could have done something different to maybe get more clients. If that's, if you find yourself in a drag or whatever, and that lasts for a couple of months, well, that can be a super drag. So knowing your numbers, though, and being able to look back at your recording, having a simple spreadsheet or QuickBooks or whatever is so important because, and I'm not speaking for Holly's situation, that can be the difference in quitting or staying in it. Mm-hmm. And being able to see that growth, an 80% growth, that's insane. And when you look at statistics for businesses, that's insane. And it's never going to be what you want. Maybe eventually. But let me tell you, we're still not there at what we want to see. But 80%, I mean, that's just kind of crazy. And then you'll be able to break it down already. You could, your month over month. And then it's like, well, I mean, hell, people grow even 1% in these major businesses. That is 0.04%. You're probably in the, 20, 30% month over month growth rate. I mean, that's just crazy. Mm-hmm. So that feeling, I can imagine, could be what would keep somebody going. So the point to that entire tangent was knowing your numbers and knowing, being able to go back and look and start now, no matter where you're at. It can be overwhelming if you're already into it or whatever. And we try so hard to get people to start from the beginning and harp on it a lot. But it's a really, really, really positive thing. Not to mention, and this is the current budget and where you're spending your money and what's working, all this stuff. And I'm talking a lot, but Holly also said something about, since her Botox and filler clients are going up, you're able to focus more on alpha. What do you mean by that? Like, are you reinvesting into like an ad? Or are you, what do you mean when you say that?
Yeah. So one thing so when you purchase one of the AMP devices, you get a launch event. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of one thing that for me kind of was not not that it wasn't a priority, but it was kind of a complex situation because of my setup. Like I'm inside of a salon with lots of other stylists. I don't have a large space to host this event. And kind of how I mentioned earlier, I kind of had to take a little bit of a step back this first quarter of the year, just due to some other stuff. So I didn't get to plan my event and get it.
You still had growth
right away. So we have got that booked for August. So that is like an intense 8-week program of planning this event. They have marketing specialists who really help you get the people that are going to purchase there at your event. And so
perfect time for laser hair removal.
Yes, and we were very strategic on how we picked the date. Like we picked the date. It's the second week after kids go back to school. It's at the end of summer, so people's big vacations are going to be over. They've been in the sun all summer.
So excited.
But it's also 2 weeks before preseason football starts in Georgia, which is a big deal.
Oh yeah.
So
football.
So anyway, very strategic on picking the date. So that is one thing. And then also really looking more into marketing the alpha. So ads. I'm excited. I participated in the, buy 3 bottles of Botox, get the ad. Which is a great promotional thing with.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to put my focus on that. And then, but also just taking that knowledge from that. And then probably doing additional ones. Like I'll probably do an ad for the event itself and then, an ad for the device and services until then. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting. Yeah. But reinvesting, we don't need to talk about that. Maybe we do. Reinvesting, back in or whatever. Obviously, the number one way to sink your business is just taking every penny you make out of it and then rolling and be like, woo, I paid myself and not putting anything back into it. But, the ad, doing different things. It's like a next level thing, right? It's like, no, you probably don't need to run an ad immediately, although I'm not opposed to it, being mindful of budget and stuff when you first start, because word of mouth, especially in medical aesthetics, is still king. Just talked about this on this webinar last night. Doesn't matter who you talk to, biggest marketing people ever, it's word of mouth is still number one, and then comes in the other stuff. So you can't always start with word of mouth as a new business / any age business. It's still word of mouth. Great client service, you then talk to people, or, boots on the ground and taking your butt over to people and talking to them. Word of mouth. But it's nice to see the growth. I actually love that you said you took a step back in the first quarter and then you're telling me that you had 80% growth or 80% of last year. And I'm like, okay, well, that's encouraging to people. Everyone caught that.
Yeah, I don't know how it happened, but and I think to that point, like this is not a get rich quick scheme,
right?
Like if that's what you're looking for, this is not it. PSA. But for me, having patience was the hardest thing because I want instant results.
Yeah, sure.
And also I kind of have that mindset. I am not shy of hard work. And I kind of had that mindset of if I want this bad enough and I work hard enough at it, it's going to be successful.
Yeah.
And it has been, but it's just kind of reevaluating what success means.
That's a good way to put it.
And how fast that's going to happen. And so, there were times where it was very discouraging because I was working so hard and it's that behind the scenes stuff that nobody really sees or appreciates,
sure.
But it really makes the difference. And, thankfully back in the fall, I had some time to really kind of build the foundation and do those things. Like, I actually sat down and typed out a business plan, which I know a lot of people don't do, but it helped me kind of evaluate like what I want and where I want to go.
Yeah.
And that's constantly changing and evolving.
Sure. Still gives you something to like stay between the ditches, focus on. Maybe the shiny stuff, but this is me, you always want to see this over here. And it's like, well, hold on a second. This was my goal through the end of the year and / Q1 or whatever. So you typed it out. And like you said, flexible, but still totally something just to give you guidance.
But just having patience with yourself and with your business and because it will come.
Yeah.
All of that hard work that you're doing behind the scenes, you will start seeing that return of investment.
Right.
And but it's hard, especially when you don't have a ton of money and you are working another job or you're a mom and a wife and it's just kind of like, am I spinning my wheels here? But I'm excited because I feel like I'm starting to see that patience pay off.
Yeah, for sure. And it doesn't, well, it depends on the level of work probably you put into how fast it pays off. But if that's where that whole grind thing comes in. If you can grind it out a little bit and set a good foundation, I think what you said is super key. setting a foundation and having plans and all that stuff that we kind of just like, I think it's a medical provider thing because we're just like, well, okay, like, do I need to sit down and like, make quarterly goals? Do I need to make a business plan? Do I need to, that's so important. And that's why it's talked about all the time. And I still think no matter how often, you start looking at business stuff, people talk about it, we still kind of poo-poo it. I think it's maybe our treatment plans are like for the day. I don't know what it is about medical providers and really business in general. We just kind of generally suck at it. And but then we're these type A people who are like go-getters, and so we make the best entrepreneurs, except we're kind of I don't want to say we're dumb at it. We just don't know. We just
haven't been taught that at all. And it's, and that makes it
the grind harder.
It does, because you also have to teach yourself that.
Right. You're learning. Yeah.
At Smiley, we have so many resources to help us with that. But it's still, it's still not easy. It's a lot of work and a lot of educating yourself. And there's so many different ways to do stuff.
Oh, sure.
And
we see, and the one thing, we can't hand you clients. The one thing we say, and then, you see, so let's be clear here. It's not like everyone that starts in aesthetics has Holly's experience. I like talking, bringing Holly in and talking about her experience because it was a little unique with her. The rural people actually do better, but still her moving somewhere new with no friends and stuff, and that little influx and burst of energy didn't happen. So that's what, but some people just they flow in and they're this little like whatever's in their towns, and they, people know who they are. And, we've had a few people like that, and the client's just flowing and there is no like down at all. And you're just kind of like, someone in this room is probably one of those people who just didn't have the experience of, whatever, the harder thing, and that's fine. Now, in the defense of that, the back end stuff that Holly's talking about was still happening, but the client thing coming in or not coming in easily, it's not hard for everybody. It was not hard honestly for Carl and I, to be totally clear. Like, and we were in separate cities. There's no reason why it should have been easy, or, not to say it was easy, but like it came a little more freely. I made a post and I got a client. Like, it just sounds like it happened a little more freely. So I don't want it to be a negative, like, you're going to have to walk door to door and sell vacuum cleaners in order to get Botox clients for everybody. But it's really good to see, and we'll start wrapping it up, but it's really good to see someone who didn't have any friends. She has friends, but didn't have any friends in the new town she lived in, had a little bit of family, but not a ton. And so didn't get that little, just burst of people just by making a post for people in her area. So anyways, as usual, comments or questions or whatever, send us a DM. We're not doing an FAQ today because we're running out of time and I talk too much. But I want to thank Holly for coming in and giving us Holly Scott, how can people get a hold of you if they have questions for you?
So on Facebook, I am Holly Scott Aesthetics, and then Instagram, Holly Scott 18. But I also have a website. It's just www.hollyscottaesthetics.com. So you can also reach out to me there.
Yeah, awesome. And if questions from, I think from a provider standpoint / she's an amazing injector.
Yeah.
So,
and I know like a lot of our independent injectors watch this, every week. So I'm happy to help answer questions or guidance or anything like that. I do get a lot of people to reach out to me. So I'm happy to walk through that, especially like if you're in those smaller communities and having trouble. Just let me know.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. She's definitely becoming a mentor in our community, which is really nice. So yeah, we're on. This is if you're watching us and can see us, you're on YouTube, but it's on Apple and Spotify and Amazon as well. We have a Patreon that we're very proud of that has clinical and legal guidance and business stuff on it. That's inexpensive compared to some people. Anyway, and yeah, this episode might not be aired this week. It might air the week after. We're not sure. But anyways, reach out to Holly, reach out to us, and thanks for watching.